Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm happy to be back. I want to thank Bridget and Roger for inviting me back. And happy Diwali. If you were in India tonight, you'd see lights everywhere on every home and every shop. It's a holiday that and in Indian American homes, you will see it tonight. It's a holiday that is said to commemorate the what is either a historical occasion or a mythology, depending on your point of view, but it symbolizes the light within us all, the divine light within us all, and the importance of bringing it out to bring light into what is currently a very dark world. And I'm happy to be in a place that is shining some light. We all need it. This microphone's so big I can't see my notes. Okay. So this is, the word was faith, and I had chosen this topic, which seems like a contradiction, but is not, as we'll see. But it's also a reminder, speaking of the workshop I'll be doing this afternoon, of why the spiritual path has been called a razor's edge and a narrow ridge and other metaphors like that, because there seems to be, we bump into paradoxes and points of ambiguity along the way. We all do. And we heard about the importance of faith. But sometimes we have a problem with faith. How many of you have ever had a crisis of faith when you doubted something and you doubted spiritual precepts, or you doubted doctrine, or you doubted somebody you held to be a teacher? Or you doubted whether this whole spiritual thing is just a lot of bunk. Maybe sex, drugs, and rock and roll is really where it's at after all. But, and how many who didn't raise their hand when I said, have you had a crisis of faith, are lying? What happens to us sometimes when we hear inspiring messages like the importance of faith and affirmations like I choose faith and I am faith, is that when doubts arise, we think there's something wrong. We think we're lacking. I remember being part of a spiritual community. It was a fairly insulated one. It wasn't a terribly egregious cult or anything. But when you express doubts about something the Guru said, you weren't ostracized or anything, but you could tell it wasn't always welcome. You know, and I grew up in Brooklyn. And I was used to saying what I thought, but I learned. But after a while, I thought, maybe I'm spiritually backward because I'm not willing to take things on faith necessarily. Maybe there's something wrong with me. And that kind of doubt can lead to feelings of guilt or shame. And it can cause us to suppress the doubt. Oh, I shouldn't have those thoughts because I'm supposed to have faith. And there seems to be a contradiction there. And so we slip into denial about our doubts. And even if we can face them on our own in our private moments, we're sometimes reluctant to voice them because, as my experience, it's like you didn't want to get those dirty looks or, not be asked to do something because they didn't want you around if you kind of express your doubts. But doubt can be a very good thing. It's first of all inevitable. If you're really on a spiritual path, you're going to run into moments where there's things you say, wait a minute, is that true? Am I doing the right thing? Is this practice really working? And if you don't ever have those, you're either blessed or you're in denial. And when they arise, we should greet them with open arms. It's almost like that poem of Rumi's where you greet these what seem to be obstacles like guests. Oh, come on in. Let me see who you are. Because on the other side of that, if you go into the doubts, if you lean into them and follow with diligence, your own discernment and your own intuitive impulses about that, you will come out on the other side with deeper faith and more authentic faith, real faith, not just, well, I'm going to go along with this because maybe, I'll be cursed or, God will not like me or my friends will disapprove or whatever kind of stories you tell yourself. Doubt can lead to more spiritual maturity, to deeper insight, to acceleration on a spiritual path, even though when it first arises, we think somehow it's a setback or a step backward. And in certain spiritual circles, this does not seem to be one of them. It's treated as a kind of illness or a kind of weakness of character. And so it leads to even more suppression. And this, of course, happens in orthodox circles of any religious tradition, fundamentalist circles of any religious tradition, and in cults. I don't know how many of you listen to my podcast, Spirit Matters, but I did an interview of just a few weeks ago, I think, with an expert on cults. And then he had me on his podcast. And so there are circles where expressing doubt is not welcome. A sign of a good, mature spiritual community, one of the signs is, are your doubts welcome? Can you express them without fear of ostracism or disapproval? Can they, Bridget? Didn't want to get into any trouble here. So I almost called this talk, How to Be a Heretic. Heresy, people who express doubts in certain periods of history or certain circles are they're called heretics. And bad things have happened to people who are called heretics. It's dangerous to be called a heretic. And one of the reasons spiritual institutions treat heretics in horrible ways is they feel threatened by the heretic. People raising doubts, that's a threat to the spiritual authority. We can't have that. Burn them. We don't live in such times, but there are pockets of that. But even in open-minded, progressive, inclusive spiritual circles, it's astonishing how much a little bit of doubt, a little bit of dissent can be, in subtle ways, disapproved of. And that we do it to ourselves because it's uncomfortable. But the discomfort, if you embrace it, can move you into a higher and deeper and more authentic spirituality. The dictionary definition of heretic is one who dissents from an accepted belief or doctrine. That's not a bad thing, is it? There's a lot of accepted beliefs and doctrines that ought to be dissented from. And even in the ones that turn out to be true, it could be a great stepping stone to really understanding of spiritual principle. If when a doubt about it arises, you square up to it and look into it, and then you might come to really get it and accept that precept, that doctrine, on a much deeper level than, hey, it sounds good, or I'm supposed to believe that, so I guess I will, and I'll talk myself into it. You can come out from doubting a specific thing to truly understanding and accepting that thing on a more authentic level. Or you can say, oh, turned out to be bull. I'm not buying that anymore. And then you have to use a discernment about what replaces that. And that's how we grow. We don't believe in Santa Claus. Well, maybe some of us do. Right? We grow. And just as we don't believe the things we did as children, we may not believe exactly the things we thought of, we believed 5 years ago or 6 months ago. That's growth. That's evolution. That's progress. Heretic actually derives from the Greek term heretikos, and it means able to choose. Imagine that. Out of that came heresy and people being burned at the stake. Able to choose. What could be more American than being able to choose? It's built in to the whole founding of this country. Freedom to choose your religion, freedom from overbearing churches and governments and all that. Martin Luther was a heretic, if able to choose is the definition. Buddha was a heretic. Jesus was a heretic. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who started Unity, could be called heretics. They chose a different way. And they created this, and you're all enjoying the benefits of their heresy. Because, I don't know if people in their time called them heretics in their Christian church in the Midwest, but I wouldn't doubt it. That's how we progress. And if we use our discernment, if we use our intellects, if we use our intuition, if we balance mind and feeling and heart, we can come through those moments of doubt and have a deeper kind of experience and a deeper kind of faith. In the Bhagavad Gita, one of the passages that stood out for me when I read it back in the day was you're advised to approach the spiritual teacher, the guru, the holy person, with humility, a spirit of service, and thorough inquiry, sometimes translated as repeated inquiry. Not absolute trust, a certain amount of trust in people who know things we don't makes sense. But blind faith, not necessarily a good thing. A repeated inquiry. I'll tell you a quick story that's not in my notes. I was in India on one of my many trips, maybe 20 years ago, and I met some Americans who were there to see a guru. And I said, oh, okay, I'll check out the guru. It was a woman. And so I pulled my author card. I say, well, I'm an author and I want to interview the guru. It opens doors sometime. So I got a private interview with this guru. And I remember sitting with her on the balcony overlooking the Ganges, which was really beautiful. And they said, we'll give you 15 minutes. And we ended up talking for an hour. And, her disciples were outside the door waiting. And I remember when I walked out, they looked at me as like, oh, he must be really special because the guru gave him so much time. And we heard them laughing. So that made me feel ridiculously uncomfortable, of course. But that's what happens. And so I went back to one of their satsangs, one of their gatherings, and it was all the worshipful stuff around the guru and hushed room. And she asked for what people wanted to talk about that. And then at a certain point, she pointed at me and said, see that man? We had a really good time the other day because he asked me hard questions. Why don't you ever ask me hard questions? And they're all like, wow. Because around those, there was this sense that, oh, you don't ask hard questions. You just, because you want to show off that you have faith and trust in the guru, so you don't ask hard questions. But that's what a real teacher would want you to do. Isn't that right, Bridget? Absolutely. Which doesn't mean that we shouldn't have faith. Faith is a good thing, but it should be real faith, not faked faith, not forced faith, not coerced faith, but mature faith, authentic faith, the kind that comes from deep experience and inquiry. Someone once said that faith is the quality that converts hope into courage. And we need courage on the spiritual path, especially if we're surrounded by people who think we're nuts for even caring about such things, or to, be here on a Sunday morning when you could be, shopping. When I lived in LA, I was able to say watching the football games, but they start at 1 o'clock here. So I can't say that. But we come to crossroads often on the spiritual path where we have to make decisions and we have to think hard and we have to weigh our options and we have to we go through what may seem like setbacks, and periods of doubt often are experienced that way. But when we work through them, we come out with that kind of faith that converts hope into courage. And we need that courage. We need the courage to face difficult times, to face our own doubts, to have the courage of our own convictions and our own witness of our own experience. A scholar of religion that some of you may have heard of named Wilford Cantwell Smith, here's his definition of faith: an orientation of the personality to oneself, to one's neighbor, to the universe, a total response, a way of seeing whatever one sees and of handling whatever one handles, with a capacity to live at more than a mundane level, to see, to feel, to act in terms of a transcendent dimension, to follow the light, the divine light within us, to be open to that. And that can lead to moments of doubt about things we thought before and bring us to higher wisdom, deeper faith. And so for all those reasons, doubt can be a sign of impending spiritual progress. Time to move on, time to think through something that needs to be thought through. And at the end, as I said, you might have a deeper conviction about a precept or a principle, or you might move on to a different one. So it takes a kind of leap of faith to face a crisis of faith, because you have to have the faith that you'll come through it okay, and that the universe is a friendly place. And this impulse of doubt is also the voice of the divine moving you forward, just as deep conviction might be taken as a sign, the voice of God in some circles, so the alignment with the divine will. So can doubt. Doubt can mean, psst, rethink this, give it a little bit more thought. And so if you can go through the crucible of doubt with the faith that you'll come out okay, and the universe is a safe place, safe enough to hold your doubt and see you through the process of going and making choices and thinking hard and asking difficult questions, there's a big payoff in spiritual progress. All of which, this interplay of doubt and faith, there's a lot of little rhythms like that make the spiritual path both sublime and wacky. It's serious, as the old saying goes, it's serious as a heart attack. I'd rather say it's as serious as an MRI, and as goofy as a sitcom. And those paradoxes, some of what we'll deal with in the workshop this afternoon, talk about the interesting moments along the path, things that arise that can be used as stepping stones and ways to accelerate our path to awakening, including those moments when you wonder if such a thing is even possible. So in the spirit of Diwali, thank you for allowing me to be a heretic this morning. And welcome to the world of doubts and faith. And I hope all or many of you at least will join us for lunch and conversation this afternoon about the nuances of real life on the spiritual path. And let me be among the first to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, we all have much to be thankful for and much light to be shed in a dark world. Thank you.